Go
Good
ahead.
afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. This is a regular meeting. It is Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. It is 2 p.m. This session is set to go until 3 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in the atrium, 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board, joining you via Zoom. Commissioner Vice Chair Ty Mincer is in the boardroom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards is also joining us via Zoom. In the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez. And if there are any staff members, I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. The topic on today's agenda is the results of November 1st, 2022 public hearing, resolution of intention to establish Offut Lake Management District. So with that, if whoever's in the boardroom of the staff, if they can introduce themselves now.
Madam Chair, we have Ms. Jennifer Walker, the Public Works Director, and Tim Wilson, the Manager of Stormwater Department Division.
I'm sorry, can you speak up because it's hard to hear you?
How about this level?
That's perfect. Thank you.
We have Jennifer Walker, the Public Works Director, and Tim Wilson, the Manager for the Stormwater Division.
Madam Chair, we also have in the gallery Diane Perlman and Gary Whitley from the Offut Lake Steering Committee, just so you're aware of that.
Thank you.
And let me frame this conversation, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
This is a follow-up to the November 1st, 2022 public hearing that you got on the resolution of the intention to form the Lake Management District in Offut Lake. As you may recall, staff brought an AIS on an agenda for you to consider authorizing going to a vote with the members of the Offut Lake. At that point, I believe Commissioner Mincer, Commissioner Mejia at least, they wanted to hit a little bit of a pause and want to have a conversation before you go to take this action to authorize the vote. This really is a follow-up to that particular conversation. And at the end of this briefing, we will be asking the board whether you like the staff to bring an AIS for you, the board, to consider authorizing the vote on the formation of the Offut Lake. That's really the framework. We have a PowerPoint presentation. I hope you have a copy with you. If not, I will share my screen here in a minute. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Tim, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. And with Ramiro's introduction, if we can go to slide 2. Thank you. So as discussed, we're here to talk about the results of the public hearing, the first public hearing in the process to consider the formation of Offut Lake Management District number 24. Going to be speaking to you about several things today. I'm going to back up to start and give you an overview of lake management districts and the proposed Offut Lake Management District petition. We'll then talk about the Lake Management District formation process, key decision points for the board and for the community, and the current status of the proposal. And at this point, it's becoming old hat to the board. But I think it's valuable to go back and just touch on that. We'll then talk about the summary of the November 1st public hearing and outline some options for the board's consideration. And as Ramiro mentioned at the end, we'll be asking for guidance from the board in how they would like to proceed. Next slide. Okay, so just some, as a reminder, a lake management district, different than a special district, a lake management district forms a county-administered program. The county staff serve as program administrators and subject matter experts. The county assumes the liability of approved activities. The county manages all permits, and the program is subject to applicable county policies. Next slide. So the Offut Lake petition that was received some months ago outlined several areas that the community wanted to focus on. The first topic was to maintain a healthy and ecological balance of humans and wildlife in the lake to ensure safety of boaters and swimmers. They want to employ best practice techniques to ensure environmental safety and preservation. They'd like to contract with an environmental consultant company to conduct a IVAMP to assess the condition of Offut Lake, water quality, identify aquatic plants and noxious species. They propose to control nuisance levels of aquatic vegetation, noxious weeds, and non-native aquatic plants in accordance with the IVAMP, as well as prescriptions developed in compliance with Thurston County's integrated pest management policy, and create a plan for best management practices. They would like to reduce toxic algae blooms and rapidly increasing weed growth, conduct regular water quality testing to identify lake nutrients and possible pollution sources. And lastly, they would like to educate and inform the Offut Lake Management District members on lake water quality and management issues, including toxic algal blooms, nutrient levels, boating safety via e-newsletters and regular OLMD advisory committee meetings. One more, Ramiro, please. Okay, so as a reminder of the formation process of an LMD, once a petition is received by the county, staff first verify that the petition meets the statutory requirements under RCW 3661. That has been done. There are then 8 major Board of County Commissioner actions, including 2 key decision points that are required for the formation of a lake management district. The first is to consider the resolution of intention, which the board has already done, to set and hold a public hearing for the public to comment on the proposed LMD. Fourth would be to authorize the vote of affected owners, followed by the adoption of an ordinance establishing the LMD. And then even after the LMD is established by ordinance, there's additional administrative steps that need to be gone through. A second public hearing would need to be set and held to hear comments on the proposed role of assessments. And that would be the last step in formation of the Lake Management District. Next slide. So with Offut Lake Management District, we are currently just beyond step 3. The board held a public hearing on November 1st of 2022 to hear objections to the resolution of formation from affected parties. And this serves as the second of 2 decision points for the Board of County Commissioners. And to move forward, the board would need to decide that the board is both, the LMD is both in the public interest and that the financing of the LMD activities are feasible. Next slide. So a little bit about what the board heard on November 1st. By my notes, we had 19 total commenters on November 1st at that public hearing. 12 were clearly in favor and were from within the boundaries of the LMD. 4 were opposed from within the boundary. There were an additional 3 comments that were from commenters that were either outside of the district, or there was one that I believe was from within the district, but the position was a little bit unclear as to whether they were for or against. Of those comments, there were also comments received from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. They brought up 2 major concerns, which we have looked into since. Those concerns were raised around no noxious weed infestations or algal blooms in Offut Lake. And the other question was of the equity of the rate structure related to the WDFW property. Both of those comments from Fish and Wildlife have been looked into. The statutes have been looked at, and staff has no concerns with those comments. I'm happy to talk more about those if needed. The first comment related to the noxious weed infestations or algal blooms. There's really no directive in the RCW that there has to be a nexus to noxious weed control in the formation of an LMD. In fact, it's very, very clear in the RCWs that an LMD can be formed to manage nuisance vegetation, such as Long Lake or Lake Lawrence largely do, or many other things as well. So there's really no statutory tie to noxious weeds or managing algal blooms.
Before you depart, I mean, do we have data or evidence of whether that statement's even true? Regardless of whether there's a nexus. I mean, I'd heard from these folks about it, but I'm just curious if our records show that we've fought noxious weeds there in the past or responded to algal bloom.
Yeah, we have not dealt with noxious weeds there in my tenure, but I understand there has been noxious weed work that has gone at least near shore. Noxious weed work that has occurred there in the past. And I have not seen the data, but my understanding is there have been algal blooms out there as well. And the residents here may be able to provide more information on that.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, the second concern from Dave Heimer at Fish and Wildlife was regarding the special assessments, the rates and charges, and specifically the charge to the boat launch out there and whether it was adequate. The problem there in that it's a very unique property with a very unique use out there, so it's hard to compare it to any other property within the lake. It is very consistent with how charges have been applied to other lakes within the county. As an example, Long Lake charges, I believe, $23,000 in 2022 for the Fish and Wildlife property. It is roughly calculated on boater days and user days, but that's very hard to quantify as well. So it's a bit unique, but it is, the RCW is clear in that there is a lot of latitude for the county or the petitioners to set that rate, and it seems in line with how other lakes have been managed.
Commissioners, I can't see you, but those were 2 of the points that I know Commissioner Mejia and I asked about when we asked for this briefing, and I know that I've followed up with the steering committee members. I know Commissioner Mejia has as well. Are there questions for Tim about those 2 items, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions for me. I also did follow up with Mr. David Heiner, I believe his name is, about kind of his public comment. So I do not have any questions at this time. Thank you, sir.
Is there anything you learned from him that you want to share with Commissioner Edwards and I?
Well, he clarified a lot of his comments in terms of kind of how more of the county process is laid out, and how other counties kind of do it. And this is in terms of kind of how we do the assessment process. And so I think that's where a majority of his concerns were coming from. He felt that maybe, you know, they were kind of being charged because they were seen as kind of the, you know, the big fund group, and he just didn't want that to kind of be the impression that, you know, was being set for future LMDs. And so that kind of was where his comment was coming from. And Tim was there with me at that meeting, and he clarified kind of a lot of our processes out for him. So I think a lot of his answers did get answered at that. Tim, am I stating that correctly?
Yes, from my perspective.
Yeah. So kind of around that was the big conversation piece on that. I also did ask him how other LMDs around the state run, and he gave us his perspective from different LMDs across the state and how they run and how he's part of those meetings. And so I thought it was a very insightful meeting.
County manager.
Maybe, Tim, if you have that information,
Ramiro, I'm so sorry. Could you speak up, please?
I'll try to be, is that better?
For some reason, your audio is coming a little bit more muted, and I'm not sure why.
We have a new microphone system in the room. In the morning was Commissioner Menser's area, so I guess this might turn in the afternoon, so I will try to speak louder. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know, just to the benefit of the viewing public, you stated that perhaps we're consistent in assessing the properties, you know, owned by the state in all the lake management districts. But also you stated that, you know, it was an attempt, by words, to use the voting, you know, launching the number of votes, but that is hard to quantify.
Yes.
So what is the methodology? If I think it's just, it will be good to verbalize what the methodology that we use consistently to determine the assessment for state-owned lands.
I think the answer to that would be the methodology used to be to attempt to quantify the user days and the voter days by members of the petitioning public watching and counting and doing that legwork. And that admittedly from the communities has been very difficult, and the accuracy is a bit questionable. So in terms of consistency, Offut Lake as compared to Lake Lawrence or Long Lake or Pattison that was just approved is consistent within a percentage, roughly a percentage of the dollar amount that has come in. During this process, what we have recognized is that the rationale and the consistency that is being applied needs some work, largely from the comments that was received from Fish and Wildlife. So I think all of the communities are aware now that there is a need for, this is a great exercise for the communities to come together and propose some consistent ways to make those proposals in their petitions for the reforming LMDs, for new LMDs, and whether that's a percentage of the annual revenue that comes in or some other factor, there's work to be done there.
And I believe that was his concern, is because of the percentage approach
Yeah,
that we have taken. And, you know,
I just want to jump in and say that where I cannot hear Romero, I can hear Tim very well, though.
Yeah,
Or maybe you want to sit over here and see if it, just as an experiment, because we're gonna need to
yeah,
let the audio people know.
we're working through this. How about if I move locations?
Oh, no, we can hear you much better now.
Okay, right now?
Because there's a problem at this end of
So
the.
there's a problem with this, we'll fix it. I guess what I was trying to say is that was exactly the comment and the concern. The representative from, WDFW was that because we use, although consistently, a percentage approach to assess their rates. You know, it seems to be that because they're big daddies, my words, they ended up with a higher percentage, if we were to be related to the rest of the fee payers on the.
You mean based on acreage or
Yeah,
something?
because it's not based on acreage, it's not based on how many, because it is, on the other end, I believe the acreage assessed on how many votes each of the properties will have, correct? And that's probably some of the issues they perhaps may have. You know, I don't think we need to resolve that. I think you stated correctly. We have been consistent as to how we have been approaching state-owned lands related to the LMDs. But it's just verbalizing that to for the benefit of the viewing public, I think is important.
What was he saying was the other way of doing it that he was familiar with? Besides some kind of percentage way that we've been doing it?
I'm trying to recall if he mentioned
An alternative
an
methodology.
alternative methodology.
Tim, I don't remember him mentioning an alternate. I think he mentioned Federal Way, actually, and how their method works, but I'm not exactly sure. I can't recall at the top of my head
Yeah,
what it was.
I don't recall that conversation either.
I mean, the thing that I think about it is that there are 3 or 4 ways you could think about
Yeah.
what that ought to be,
Yeah.
and there's no right answer.
Right.
So I mean, we could sit here and go round and round in a circle about, well, you could do it that way and it would be logical. You could do it another way, it would be logical, you know, and I don't see that that's fruitful.
No, I think there's an opportunity here going forward to work with Fish and Wildlife and all of the communities collaboratively, because we don't want it, we don't want Long Lake doing it one way and Pattison Lake doing it one way. But to form a work group of those communities and the county and Fish and Wildlife to come up with a rationale that Fish and Wildlife is going to find palatable enough to continue to support the communities and continue to vote yes on the petitions if they come forward. But that they don't have heartburn over either. And that, may be a simple percentage. To your point, the private, homeowners on the front of the lake may pay $750 a year. The Fish and Wildlife boat launch may be a similarly sized piece of property, but the benefit that Fish and Wildlife is receiving is much different. It's different than getting your boat off the dock and being able to recreate on the lake. It is about improved water quality. It's about improved fish habitat and those types of things. So the benefits are very different.
Which they do have a vested interest,
Absolutely.
in terms of water quality and wildlife improvement. So, and I think a managed lake is probably what the benefit they will have in implementing some of their objectives anyways.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just think it's not, if a boat launch is a conduit for all sorts of the public to come in and access it, then talking about acreage that's illogical.
Right.
They're not apples and oranges.
I think that's why the 2 comments were made. One, what's the history, from his perspective conveying, is there a history of having noxious weeds in the lake? So I think there was a difference of opinion on that. But I mean, if you think about, they're tied together, basically saying water quality from their perspective is looking at noxious weeds and then algae blooms, right?
All inclusive.
Yes. right, I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying, but that was his logic, and then looking at, okay, well, how percentage-wise are you charging us?
As you stated, here lies an opportunity as to how we move forward. So we don't put ourselves, the county, and perhaps the Board of County Commissioners, to make a decision based on a soft approach as to how we determine the evaluation of state properties.
Yeah, my concern is if one lake, as an example, has, it's 10% of their annual income and another one is 18 or 20%, then, okay, it's within a range, but it needs to be a little tighter than that and a little more thought out, so.
This is not an opportunity for the public to comment. If the chair would like to give you a floor, he will give a floor to you, sir.
Commissioners, anything else before we move on?
Nope, not from me.
Not for me, thank you.
Keep going.
Okay, so next slide, just to frame up the available board options. Per RCW 3661, the board has the authority at this point to either pass a resolution authorizing a vote of affected property owners, providing, again, that the board finds that the petition it is in the public interest and that the proposed financing for the LMD activities are feasible. The second option is for the board to stop the Offut Lake Management District formation process, and this would be the juncture to consider that. Next slide. If the board moves forward with authorizing a vote, a ballot would be received by all of the affected owners within the boundaries, simply asking if the petition should be approved or not approved.
Real quick, is there, I know sometimes we hear after these votes that some people are very involved in the process. Other people don't even hear about it till the last second. They're
Right.
just checked out.
Right.
If you ask them that, is there something that will tell them that this means you'll be charged an assessment? I mean, because if you just read that, you don't necessarily know that you're taxing yourself by forming the district.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we send an information page with the ballot. The affected property owners would evaluate the information on the county's webpage. On the county's webpage, the Healthy Lakes webpage, we would have everything beginning with the petition that was received from the community, public hearing results, the resolution itself that the board would be acting upon, information on other LMDs that they can draw information from. All of that is on a information sheet along with their charge, the $750 for upland owners, and on
Go to the
here.
next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure, I mean, I wasn't sure why you were showing us this question,
Yeah, that one probably could have been pulled out, actually.
because they're gonna get more than what's on this
Yes,
slide.
they are.
Okay.
They are. Yeah, they are going to be referred back through the whole process to the Healthy Lakes website that has a page specifically for the Offut Lake Management District or Patterson Lake Management District, has all their information.
County manager.
So on the, is that a ballot, a sample ballot, or that's the actual ballot that you send
It's
out?
a sample ballot.
So I didn't see the name or the names or the property, how you tie those two together to,
Are we on the correct slide? I'm sorry to interrupt.
that one, I'm talking about
There
that
we go.
one.
Okay.
I didn't see a place where the name or the parcel number or the property identifier, so how we tied in
Yeah,
the
no, thank you
votes.
for that. And that would be on the actual ballot that goes out. I was just stating the RCW statute there as an example.
And so this next slide where it says the vote continued, this is the information. It's referencing what is on the what would be on the website. So the petition for the residents is on, from the residents, the resolution
Yes.
of intention, right?
Yes, thank you.
So going to Commissioner Menzer's question about what is it, are they getting any additional information? That was the intent of this, to say, here is all of the additional information.
The voting is weighted, again, so that, different categories, lakefront developed parcels, $750 annual fee equals 750 votes. Upland parcels, $70 annual rate equals 70 votes. So the voting is weighted. LMD is formed, by a simple majority. And if the simple majority is not reached, the LMD process would stop at that point. So, next steps, after the LMD is formed, the annual rates and charges are added to annual property tax statements. If the community chooses, a steering committee is established to provide input. Short and long-term work plans are developed collaboratively with the community. An integrated aquatic vegetation management plan, or IVAMP, is developed before any in-body or in-lake work is done that involves herbicides. The roles and responsibilities for management of the LMD are defined in the LMD administrative rules. And alignment with greater county initiatives and guiding principles is a priority. And with that, I would open it up to any questions or discussion.
Commissioner Edwards, questions or any?
Where they don't enforce the
Comment?
zone 10 policy, and now it's got 10 everywhere.
No, I have no questions.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions at this time. I guess unless, are we gonna start discussing public comment next, or?
Yeah, I guess we can discuss, the question that being asked of the board is whether we want to set this on, it has to be on a Tuesday afternoon, that we
Yeah,
would then
to bring in
vote
the-
to
Authorize the vote.
authorize the vote. So is there, commissioners whatever you want to weigh in, Commissioner Mejia, go ahead. Public comment or
Thank you.
otherwise.
Okay, Tim, could you review, we received, a letter from, one of the, associations, from the HOAs. And I was wondering if you could cover that.
I will certainly try. I think that you may be referring to the community, the name of the community escapes me, that is higher up and removed a little bit from the lake and had concerns at the amount of charges that their community overall would be inputting into the lake with their perception of few benefits in return. Is that accurate?
I believe it's the Bronson HOA.
Yeah, that's
I remember it was from a letter from the HOA president, and I'm trying to pull it up right now. But yeah, those kind of wanted to kind of go over his comments.
Yeah, and I apologize, I don't have that letter in front of me.
Where is it? I can pull it up. Is it on the O drive?
It would be under the public comments that came in.
Okay.
So. We're pulling it up.
And also, I can bring this back on Tuesday morning for your decision, as we come in practice. If we cannot find that information, do you request a Commissioner Mejia?
Yeah, it's from Danny Howard. And he is the president of the, and I pulled it up, of the Bronson Country Beach Club. And so he, on his comments, he said, there are a few flaws that the Bronson Country Beach Club HOA board would like to point out with the LMD proposal. And then he points out a couple of properties on there. And then he made like four major points, including kind of the upland amounts. So that, I just kind of wanted to hear from your perspective on that, Tim.
Yeah, well, here's what I can say. This is similar to the question that came up with the formation of Pattison Lake with, I think, the Lake Point community. And what I can tell you is the petition that included that community was legal. There is certainly a lot of discretion in the RCWs and the statutes for a petitioning community to draw the boundaries as they see fit and include upland communities. That is done often. I will also say it, similar to a lot of the comments that were received for Pattison, it's a common point of concern from those upland properties that don't see a direct benefit in many cases to it. So what I can speak to is that per the RCWs, it is legal for the petitioners to draw the lines as such.
Thank you. And I think, he's comparing this one especially to Long Lake, I believe, and the Lake Forest community and Long Lake. And so they say that they support what the Offut Lake Steering Committee is trying to do, but they don't believe that they should be included in that. And then he specifically names out a couple of parcels.
Yeah, we're attempting to pull it up still, and I apologize for not having the individual comments in front of me.
Maybe, if I may, Commissioner Mejia, maybe have Tim go through that letter and come back next Tuesday morning to just walk through the elements of that letter and perhaps provide a response from the
Yes.
staff point of view. And then at that point, maybe the board will be in the position to consider taking an action on this.
I'd like to jump in there if I could.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I think, though, that they feel that maybe they're not receiving enough of a benefit for what they're contributing, but I believe that they have private access to the lake through their association, and that is the benefit that they're receiving, I believe.
Yes, they would have access to the property to be included. That's correct.
Access to the lake.
Yes.
Yes.
And they pay like 10% of what the lakefront property owners pay. So, okay, well, the county manager's suggestion is fine with me. I remember that comment, I read it, and it did not convince me that we shouldn't send this to a vote, so I'll just lay my cards on the table. I'm gonna support the setting.
Okay, and then I'll follow up that I'm in that same situation. I do feel there is a benefit to those backlot property owners, even though they don't have individual lakefront property, they do have the access, and so they do get the benefit. And like Commissioner Mentzer said, it's costing them about 10% of what it costs the lakefront owner. And that lakefront owner is also paying a lot heavier tax burden than that back lot owner is paying. So I don't see it as a disparaging problem myself. So I'm ready to move forward as well.
So I really, I have then two commissioners moving forward in the process. Commissioner Mejia,
I'm not ready to move forward, so, but you have two commissioners who are.
so I have 2-1. So we'll bring an AIS for your consideration, and then it will be then, that will be a formal vote that you will take on that AIS.
Okay, anything else we need to address today?
That's all we have for you, Commissioners. Thank you.
We have another briefing at 3, is that correct?
Yeah.
So we're adjourned for this session, thank you.